I was sitting on my couch, staring at my still-packed suitcase by the door. We were supposed to be celebrating our 8th anniversary in Hawaii. But Ethan, my husband, canceled last minute, claiming he had a huge tech launch coming up. "I just can't leave now," he'd said. I believed him, until my phone buzzed. It was a text from my coworker Julie, who was on vacation at that very same resort. "Isn't this your husband?" The photo showed Ethan by the pool, wearing the same blue swim trunks he'd bought for our trip. But he wasn't alone. The young woman with long dark hair was right next to him, leaning in, laughing. My heart pounded. I felt dizzy. This was our dream spot, the place we'd saved up for. He'd canceled on me, only to show up there with someone else. Anger and shock fought in my chest. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I just stared at the image. It felt unreal. Like my life had split in two. One path was the normal me, loyal wife, marketing consultant, trusting partner. The other was a woman betrayed, forced to see the truth in a single snapshot. "Claire," I whispered to myself, "what are you gonna do?" My hands shook as I hit the FaceTime icon. Ethan's face appeared, the familiar tight smile he used whenever he was cornered. My voice quivered, but I forced myself to sound calm. "Ethan, I have a question," I said. "Are you really at work right now?" He blinked, then grinned like I'd made some silly joke. "Of course. Where else would I be?" I held my breath. "Julie just sent me a photo. It's you at the resort, with someone else." He stiffened. A flicker of panic crossed his face before he laughed. "That must be an old photo, probably from last year or some business event. You know people love to spread rumors." My heart clenched. "It's time-stamped. It's today." He mumbled something about technology being easy to fake. Suddenly, the call froze. I realized he'd hung up on me. A wave of rage surged through my veins. How dare he treat me like I was stupid? I tried calling back, but each ring echoed like a slap. It went to voicemail. My husband was lying to my face. I'd caught him red-handed, and he still tried to deny everything. That was my gut punch. The man I trusted was gaslighting me, plain and simple. I sat on the couch, phone in hand, my mind racing. I expected tears, maybe a full breakdown, but nothing came out. It was like my emotions had hit pause. I put the phone down and looked around our living room. Photos of us hiking in Colorado, tickets from concerts we went to, moments of happiness. Now they felt like set pieces in a play I'd walked into by mistake. I pressed my lips together and took a breath. If Ethan was willing to lie so boldly, I needed facts. No drama, no second guessing. Just receipts, times, dates, everything. I wanted the truth pinned down, so it couldn't wiggle away. I opened the folder with our travel details. We'd planned this Hawaii trip for months, emailing back and forth about flight options, hotel rooms, even snorkeling tours. I scrolled through the timestamps. His cancellation had happened just hours before I got that text from Julie. That felt too perfect, too well-timed. Slowly, I started writing everything down in a notebook. Dates, emails, texts, a timeline to keep me grounded. I felt no tears, no breakdown. Just a cold focus. Because something in me knew. This was only the beginning. Determined to gather more proof, I remembered we shared a cloud account for expenses. Usually, Ethan never bothered to organize those receipts, but I knew each digital transaction was synced there. My fingers twitched as I logged in. Sure enough, there it was. A restaurant bill at the Coral Sands Resort, the exact place we'd planned to stay. Dated yesterday, with his name, his signature, and a big tip. My pulse roared in my ears. The appetizer listed was grilled octopus, Ethan's favorite. 2 entrees plus a decadent dessert. Just reading the receipt made my stomach twist. He was doing all these special vacation things with her. I tried to calm myself and remember my plan. Document first, confront later. I screenshot the receipt and added it to my notebook. This was irrefutable proof. He was definitely there. I looked at the time, 8:42 p.m., the same moment Ethan had texted me, working late, don't wait up. My hands clenched into fists. I stared at that line on the receipt again. The brazen way he was taking her out, using our shared funds. Every tiny detail lit a fire inside me. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was a growing trail of lies. The next morning, I examined the photo Julie had sent me. There was enough detail to spot the woman's face. She had a sleek ponytail, tinted sunglasses, and a bright red bikini. Her body was turned toward Ethan, like they were sharing a private joke. I saved the image and opened a visual search tool. I tapped on her face, letting the app scan. It instantly pulled up a LinkedIn profile. Sienna Ross, marketing associate at Ethan's tech company. 26 years old. Fresh out of grad school, so that was the assistant he'd mentioned once in passing. He never said her name, just my new junior hire. A jolt of betrayal shot through my chest. She worked for him. This wasn't just cheating. It was unprofessional, unethical, and humiliating. My stomach churned as I swiped through Sienna's profile. She had a perfect smile in her headshot, the kind of look that screamed ambition. I tried not to jump to conclusions, but the resort photo was too telling. My notebook was growing. The liar had a name now. Sienna. I turned off my phone and stared at the blank wall. I whispered her name once, letting it sink in, because that name was about to change my life forever. Later that day, I created a burner account on Instagram and decided to do more digging. Sienna's page was private, but her story highlights were partially visible. One showed a beach with a blurred figure in the background. Another showed a fancy dinner table for two, hearts all over the screen. My gaze caught something. A watch on a man's wrist. Silver, with a small scratch near the clasp. I knew that watch. I'd given it to Ethan for his birthday last year. My throat felt tight as I zoomed in. That was definitely Ethan's watch. I recognized the scratch because we joked about how he'd fumbled it the first day he wore it. The highlight was tagged only a few days ago. My hands shook. This was tangible proof and open display. Did Ethan think I'd never look? Or did he just not care anymore? I saved screenshots. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. The mask Ethan wore at home was cracking. He pretended nothing was wrong, sent me texts like working late and miss you, but online, the truth was out. It was maddening, and it only made me more determined to get real answers and real justice. I woke up before dawn with a single thought. I need legal help. I didn't want a messy confrontation yet. I wanted a plan. So I Googled divorce lawyers in my city and found one with stellar reviews. I dialed her number at 8 a.m. sharp. A calm voice answered, and I booked a consultation for later that week. I felt my heart race. Just making that appointment felt like stepping onto a new path. Then I started recording everything. Every moment Ethan lied to me over text. Every suspicious phone call. Every time he worked late and forgot to come home until midnight. I wrote it all down, with dates and times. When Ethan finally called me back from Hawaii, I acted normal. "Oh, it's fine, honey," I said, forcing a smile through the phone. "I know work is crazy." He sounded relieved that I bought his story, but underneath my voice I was trembling with anger. I refused to let him see my rage. Instead, I gathered it like a storm behind my eyes, waiting. If he wanted to lie, I'd let him. Because soon, I'd have enough proof to ensure he wouldn't just lose my trust, he'd lose everything he'd tried to hide. My lawyer, Andrea, was sharp and confident. The moment I described Ethan's behavior, she told me to dig into our finances. "Cheaters often move money around," she said. I sat in her sunlit office, scanning spreadsheets on my laptop. We had a joint account, some investments, and a few other assets. Nothing seemed out of place at first glance, but then I saw a pattern: monthly transfers to a consulting entity. The name was unfamiliar, and the amounts kept growing. I Googled that entity's name. It was a shell corporation, registered a few months ago. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Ethan had set this up without telling me, and he was moving funds in small, steady increments. Andrea leaned forward. "He's shifting shared assets to his personal control, likely prepping for a split." My chest tightened, my nails digging into my palms. So he hadn't just cheated on me emotionally, he was also cheating me out of money. His entire plan was to leave me in the dust, financially crippled. I saved the documents in multiple backups. Andrea patted my hand. "Stay calm. Gather everything. The more evidence, the stronger your case." I nodded, rage boiling inside. Ethan wasn't just a liar, he was a thief. That weekend I met some mutual friends for coffee. I kept a casual smile, even though my insides were churning. I brought up Ethan like it was no big deal. "We've both been so busy. Did he mention anything about his new project?" My friend Rachel sipped her latte, eyes flicking to the side. She hesitated. He told us you guys were taking a break." I almost dropped my coffee. "A break?" My voice squeaked. Rachel shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "Yeah, he said it was a mutual decision, that you were focusing on your career, and he was focusing on some personal stuff." My heart pounded. "A break? We never discussed that. Now I knew he'd been crafting a narrative behind my back. I forced a laugh. Wow, that's news to me. Our other friend Mike shifted awkwardly. He's been off lately. He said you two drifted apart. I bit my tongue to keep from exploding. I managed a tight smile. Thanks for letting me know. As soon as I left, I texted Andrea. He's telling people we're separated. I stared at my phone, hands trembling with anger and betrayal. Ethan was rewriting our story without even telling me. And that was the final push I needed. A week later, I attended a marketing conference on behalf of my company. I knew Ethan's company would be there too. I hoped to keep my distance, but while sipping coffee in a bustling hallway, I spotted Sienna. She paused mid-step, eyes going wide. She had a name tag, wearing a stylish blazer, clearly trying to look professional. I could see panic flicker in her expression. But I forced a friendly smile. Hi, Sienna, right? Her face went pale. Oh, hi, Claire. I didn't realize you'd be here. I played it cool, even though my stomach twisted. Small world, huh? How are things? She stammered something about being busy, then her eyes darted around. Clearly, she felt cornered. Suddenly, she blurted, I'm sorry about you and Ethan. He told me you two were, basically done. I froze. He said that? She nodded, then caught herself. I thought you were on a break. Like you said, so. My heart pounded with pure fury. But on my face, I kept a polite grin. Right, well, nice seeing you. I walked away, hands trembling. Sienna had just confirmed the lies. Ethan was telling her we were divorcing. He was setting the stage for our future to crumble. All while I played the role of clueless wife. That same night, I used my burner account to send a polite email to Ethan's company's conference scheduling team. I pretended to be a potential client, curious about the schedules of their key executives. It was a long shot, but the next morning, I got a courtesy response. No meetings for Ethan that week. He's on personal leave. They included the date range, exactly our anniversary trip week. I stared at the email, my breath catching in my throat. He had told me he was slammed with meetings, that this was a crucial time for the company, but he'd actually taken vacation days. I saved that email, adding it to my growing folder of evidence. Everything was lining up. Ethan had canceled our trip, lied to me about working, and used our shared finances to whisk Sienna away. My mind flashed with the memory of him hugging me the night before he left, telling me not to worry, that work will slow down soon. I felt betrayed all over again, but beneath that hurt, a grim determination fueled me. I whispered to myself as I closed my laptop, keep going, Claire. He wants to play dirty. Let's see who wins. I didn't plan to cry, but when the email arrived, my eyes stung with sudden tears. It was a confirmation email from a 5-star restaurant in Maui, the exact one Ethan and I had talked about for our anniversary dinner. The reservation was for 2, scheduled for the night we were supposed to be celebrating. He never canceled that part. Instead, he used it for him and Sienna. I felt a hot flash of anger, followed by a deep ache. That restaurant was on my dream list, somewhere special we'd promised ourselves, and he'd given that moment to her. My tears only lasted a minute. Then I swallowed hard, saving the email. Another receipt. Another piece of proof. I texted Andrea the screenshot. She responded immediately. This will help. Keep everything. Ethan still hadn't returned home. He told me he needed a few more days for a big project. Lies, lies, lies. And here was the evidence staring at me in bold letters. Dinner for 2. Happy anniversary. I closed my eyes, clenching my fists. Fine. Let him have this fancy dinner. Because soon I'd serve him something far less pleasant, my own brand of justice. Ethan finally returned a few days later, looking tanned and relaxed. He tried to kiss my cheek, but I ducked away, pretending I had a headache. Inside, my pulse was raging, but I had a plan, and I wouldn't blow it by screaming now. Over dinner at home, I casually mentioned we should review our finances together soon. His eyes flickered with alarm. Why? He asked, forcing a smile. I shrugged, playing clueless. Oh, just want to make sure everything's in order, especially with that big project you're doing. He nodded, but I saw his knuckles go white around the fork. The next day, I caught him rummaging through paperwork in his home office. I pretended not to notice, quietly sipping coffee across the hall, heart pounding. I wanted him uneasy, guessing what I knew but unsure how much. That tension was my advantage. If he realized how close I was to the truth, he might move even more money or hide more evidence. I couldn't let that happen just yet. By the time he left for work, he was jumpy and distracted. My phone dinged with a text from Andrea. "Keep the pressure on, but don't show your hand." I smiled grimly. Seeds planted. One evening, Ethan said he'd be working late again. I seized my chance. I remembered we'd had a small fireproof safe in the closet, rarely used, mostly for passports and old documents. Something about the way Ethan acted lately made me think there could be more inside. I found the key hidden in his sock drawer. My heart pounded as I opened the safe. At first, I saw the usual stuff, but then I spotted a prepaid phone. It was tucked under some envelopes. My fingers trembled as I powered it on. Instantly, a gallery of photos popped up. Dozens of pictures of Ethan and Sienna, smiling, kissing, arms wrapped around each other. There were date stamps from a year ago to just last week. Another wave of betrayal hit me. This wasn't a fling. It was a long-term affair. My jaw clenched as I sent each photo to myself. The phone also held text messages between them, full of sweet talk and plans for their secret vacations. My body shook with anger. I locked the safe back up, placing everything as it was. Then I threw the phone key back in his drawer. He'd never suspect I'd found it. And now, I held the darkest proof of his betrayal. Sitting at my desk, I stared at the newly transferred photos from Ethan's secret phone. Some were dated from last year, at the same resort. That meant this Hawaii trip wasn't the first time he'd taken Sienna on our dream vacation. A memory tugged at me. Last year, Ethan claimed he had a surprise business trip to the East Coast. He even brought me home a cheesy souvenir coffee mug. It made me smile at the time. Now, it made me sick. He'd been in Hawaii with Sienna, enjoying beaches and romantic dinners. I closed my eyes, remembering how disappointed I was that he missed my birthday during that trip. I had brushed it off, telling myself he was working so hard to provide for us. But he was off in paradise with another woman. My blood boiled, and a wave of nausea hit. I forced myself to breathe. Each photo was a lie revealed. But knowledge was power. This fueled me to keep going. I clicked my phone, sending everything to a secure folder Andrea had set up. Let Ethan have his illusions. I now knew the extent of his lies, and soon he'd face the consequences. Later that week, Ethan finally broke down and confessed, sort of. He cornered me in the living room, face strained. "Claire, we need to talk." He admitted he'd been confused, that he met someone at work. He said it wasn't serious, just an emotional connection. My heart pounded at his half-truths. He didn't know I'd seen every photo. "I'm really sorry," he murmured, gripping my hand. I think we need a trial separation to figure things out." I stared at him, letting my eyes well up just enough. "A separation?" I echoed, voice trembling. Inside I was boiling, but I let him think I was shocked and hurt. He nodded, tears brimming in his own eyes, probably fake. "I never wanted it to be like this, but I'm not sure if I love you the way I used to." His words cut, even though I knew they were laced with manipulation. He was trying to ease out of this marriage on his own terms, painting himself as the conflicted husband. I sniffed, nodded slowly. "Okay, if that's what you want." He squeezed my hand, thinking he'd successfully gaslit me again. But I was miles ahead now, and his gaslighting, it was about to blow up in his face. That same night, I texted Andrea. He finally admitted to the affair. She responded instantly. Time to pull the trigger. I'd been collecting evidence for weeks. I had photos, bank statements, phone records. Most importantly, our prenup had an infidelity clause. If Ethan cheated, I would be entitled to a much larger portion of our assets, but I needed it fully documented. Andrea hired a forensic accountant to dig deeper into Ethan's shell accounts. I authorized her to gather phone records, emails, anything that proved his adultery and financial deceit. Each new piece felt like a protective shield around me. Meanwhile, Ethan strutted around the house like he'd come clean, like we could part ways peacefully. He kept mentioning amicable divorce, trying to push me to sign vague papers. I'd pretend to be uncertain, flipping through them, eyes watering. I'd just need time to think. In truth, I had zero intention of signing anything he gave me. I was playing along, letting him believe I was too heartbroken to see straight. But I saw everything. And with each signature he forged in his shell accounts, each receipt he hid, he tightened my legal trap further. Soon, I'd unleash it all. My next step was securing my own future. Andrea advised me to update my will and beneficiaries, so I did exactly that. I removed Ethan from every policy, life insurance, medical directives, even my emergency contacts. I named a close cousin as my new power of attorney. It felt surreal, crossing out my husband's name on documents that once symbolized our trust. But I knew I had to protect myself. If Ethan was moving money and lying about our status, I had no clue what else he might do. I typed each change with steady fingers, ignoring the ache in my chest. It dawned on me how far I'd come in just a few weeks. I was no longer in denial or shock. I was proactive, methodical. This was bigger than heartbreak now. This was survival. When I sealed the updated will in an envelope, I felt a tiny spark of triumph. Ethan would never see this coming. He probably thought I was curled up in bed, crying over our broken marriage. But in reality, I was rewriting my entire life, one legal document at a time. I slipped the envelope into a locked file cabinet, exhaling. Step by step, I was taking back control. A few days later, Ethan made an announcement that nearly made me drop my mug. He said, "Sienna and we're gonna live together for a while. I think it's best for us to have space, you and me." He said it with a solemn face, but I could see the tiny grin tugging at his lips. He probably thought he was free. He wanted me to mope around like a broken woman while he played house with his younger mistress. I played my part, wide eyes, trembling chin. I guess if that's what you need, I won't stop you." He gave me a sad smile, like he was doing me a favor. "It's for the best, Claire. Let's keep things calm and avoid drama." I nodded, biting my lip. Inside, I was screaming. Avoid drama? He'd canceled our anniversary, lied, and drained accounts. Yet he thought he could waltz out the door scot-free. That evening, he packed a few suitcases and left. I watched from the window as he drove away. Then I closed the curtains, my heart racing with a strange mix of anger and relief. He was gone, physically. But soon, I'd make sure he was gone legally and financially in a much bigger way. With Ethan gone, I felt freer to move. I installed a small security camera in the hallway, right by the study. It recorded both video and audio, sending clips to my phone. He still had a key, and I suspected he'd return to rummage through files or grab valuables. Sure enough, 2 nights later, the motion alert pinged my phone at midnight. I watched live as Ethan crept inside, heading straight for his office. My heart pounded. I turned up the volume. He was on a phone call. "Yeah, Sienna? I'm just grabbing some documents." He rummaged through drawers, cursing softly. "Claire suspects nothing. I told her we need space. She ate it up. Now I can finalize the transfer without her noticing." My blood boiled, but I stayed silent, letting the camera capture every word. He was basically admitting to hiding money. Then, with a sigh, he added, "Once the divorce is settled, I'll be fine. She won't get much anyway. She's clueless." I bit my lip so hard it bled, but I didn't burst into the room. I let him leave, slamming the front door behind him. Because this was the smoking gun I needed, his own voice, confessing everything on camera. The next morning, I marched into Andrea's office with my laptop in hand. I showed her the security footage of Ethan's midnight visit. She watched, jaw tightening. "This is golden," she said. "Clear evidence of deception and intent." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Let's do it, let's file." She smiled. "You ready?" I thought about everything. The lying, the stolen vacation, the heartbreak. My stomach still felt raw, but I was beyond fear. I was sure. Absolutely. That afternoon, we filed for divorce. The complaint included adultery, financial misconduct, and emotional cruelty. Everything was laid out in black and white. The photos, the receipts, the phone logs, and the hidden camera footage. I felt a strange rush, handing it all over to the court clerk, like dropping a heavy burden. When the papers were ready to be served, I asked Andrea where they'd do it. She told me they'd hired a server who planned to deliver them to Ethan at a downtown restaurant. I pictured Ethan leaning across the table to Sienna, laughing at some private joke. Then, a tap on his shoulder. "You've been served." I almost felt a grim satisfaction. Almost. Word traveled fast. By the next week, a workplace gossip blog somehow got hold of the resort photo. Ethan and Sienna laughing by the pool, drinks in hand. It spread among their coworkers like wildfire. Someone leaked it to their HR department, too. I heard from a friend inside the company that they launched an internal investigation. Office relationships were allowed, but lying and misuse of company resources weren't. Plus, Sienna was a direct report. That raised all kinds of ethical flags. Sienna was temporarily demoted while they figured out what to do. Ethan's reputation tanked among his colleagues. The rumor mill said the board was furious. Clients were uncomfortable. His carefully built image as a visionary tech executive was unraveling. One morning, Ethan called me in a rage. "Why would you spread that photo? You're ruining my career." My chest squeezed. It still hurt to hear him talk like I was the villain. But I calmly replied, "I didn't leak anything. Maybe you shouldn't have taken your mistress to a place where people you know vacation." He yelled something nasty and hung up. I gripped the phone, heartbeat racing. Even if I hadn't sent it, I couldn't help but feel a twist of satisfaction in seeing his perfect facade crumble. The day of our court hearing arrived. I walked into the courtroom with Andrea by my side, my stomach churning with nerves. Ethan was already there, stiff in a tailored suit, Sienna nowhere in sight. He tried to give me a cold glare, but I met his eyes head-on. The judge reviewed the files, flipping pages, eyebrows rising with each new piece of evidence. Ethan's lawyer attempted to spin some sob story about how we'd grown apart and that the finances were complicated. But then Andrea stood up, laptop in hand. She played the hidden camera footage. Ethan's voice echoed through the courtroom. "She won't get much anyway. She's clueless." I saw the judge's expression darken. Ethan's face went pale. He tried to interrupt, claiming I had no right to record him. Andrea calmly explained it was our home, and I had every right to install a security camera for protection. Finally, the judge asked Ethan if he had any defense. His voice trembled as he tried to blame me for being cold and unavailable. The judge didn't buy it. The evidence was too strong. I felt a shaky relief wash over me. For so long, I'd been silently suffering. Now, under those bright courtroom lights, the truth was out for all to see. A week later, the final ruling arrived. The judge declared that Ethan had breached our prenup's infidelity clause. He'd also concealed assets. The court awarded me the house, the bulk of our savings, and 70% of our shared investments. Ethan stood there, stunned, as the judge spelled it out clearly. My heart pounded in my chest. I could barely process it. It was a huge victory, one that felt both surreal and deeply satisfying. All his careful planning, his sneaking around, undone by his own arrogance. Ethan tried to argue, "She can't take everything." But the judge was firm. "You signed the prenup. You violated it. Actions have consequences." Andrea squeezed my shoulder, beaming. I glanced over at Ethan, who looked as if someone had knocked the wind out of him. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I remembered everything he'd done. The pity vanished. He stormed out of the courtroom. I walked out calmly, head high. My knees felt weak, but I stood strong. This was closure. This was justice. And as I stepped into the cool air outside, I finally felt free. He wanted to leave me with nothing. Instead, he handed me my future on a silver platter. A month later, I boarded a flight to Maui. Alone this time. I booked a gorgeous resort with an ocean view suite, the same type Ethan and I once dreamed of. But there was no sadness in my heart anymore, only a bright sense of triumph. I arrived at the resort, feeling a rush of memories. But instead of tears, I felt empowered. I spent my days walking on the beach, listening to the waves, sipping fresh pineapple juice by the pool. Every moment felt like a personal victory, a symbol that I'd reclaimed my life. One evening, I snagged a table at that 5-star restaurant. Soft music played as I savored my meal, a serving of butter-poached lobster baked in its shell with brandy cream sauce. At one point, I raised my glass of white sparkly wine to nobody in particular. Then I took a quick photo of the sunset and posted it online with a single caption: "When life gives you lemons, make lemonades out of them." Comments poured in, supportive, proud, cheering me on. It felt good to see how many people had my back. As I watched the sun dip below the horizon, I realized I wasn't alone or broken. I was stronger, wiser, and ready to start fresh. In the end, Ethan's lies set me free, and that freedom tasted sweeter than any revenge I could have dreamed.